The private elevator to Sebastian Pierce's penthouse office hummed with the quiet efficiency of expensive machinery, perfectly matching the low boil of his sister's impatience. Natalie had cornered him again, and this time he couldn't escape. "No," Sebastian said firmly, not bothering to look up from his tablet where he was reviewing quarterly projections for Pierce Global Investments. "Whatever scheme you're hatching, I'm not interested." Natalie Pierce Bennett tapped her designer heel against the elevator floor, arms crossed over her cashmere sweater. "You haven't even heard what I was going to say." "You've got that look," Sebastian muttered, swiping through financial reports. "The one that means you're about to meddle in my personal life. When was the last time you went on a date, Seb? And don't say that charity gala last month. Standing next to someone for a photo op doesn't count." The elevator doors opened to his penthouse office, a sprawling space of glass and steel with panoramic views of the Manhattan skyline. Sebastian strode toward his desk, hoping his sister would take the hint and leave. She didn't. "I'm 34, he said, setting down his tablet. "Not exactly collecting Social Security. I'll date when I have time," Natalie laughed. "That's the problem. You're never going to have time because you schedule your life down to the minute." She picked up the leather-bound planner from his desk. "Look at this. You've penciled in lunch for exactly 45 minutes on Thursday." Sebastian snatched the planner back. "Running a multi-billion-dollar investment firm doesn't leave much room for spontaneity. Which is why I've taken the liberty of scheduling something for you." Natalie's smile was both triumphant and slightly dangerous. "Dinner tonight, 8 o'clock at Lumiere." Sebastian stared at his sister. "You didn't." "I did. Her name is Nina Blackwell. She's brilliant, beautiful, and recently moved back to New York after finishing her residency in Chicago. She's a pediatric surgeon. I don't care if she's solved world hunger. Cancel it. Too late." Natalie was already walking backward toward the elevator. "And I've already told your assistant to clear your evening. If you stand her up, I'll tell Mom you're the one who broke her favorite vase playing indoor baseball when we were kids." Sebastian's jaw tightened. That was 25 years ago. And she still brings it up at every family dinner, wondering which neighborhood kid did it. Natalie raised an eyebrow. 8 o'clock, Seb. Don't be late." The elevator doors closed on her smug expression, leaving Sebastian alone with his irritation and a blind date he had no interest in attending. Sebastian Pierce didn't have time for dating. He certainly didn't have time for whatever well-intentioned disaster his sister had arranged. His day was already packed with back-to-back meetings, and now he would have to waste valuable hours on small talk with a stranger. He buzzed his assistant. "James, get me everything you can find on Nina Blackwell. Pediatric surgeon, recently moved from Chicago." "Right away, Mr. Pierce." Sebastian turned to the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city below. The empire he'd built hadn't come from wasting time on distractions. After their father's sudden death 10 years ago, he'd taken Pierce Global Investments from a mid-sized firm to one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. Dating, relationships, marriage, these were luxuries for people who weren't responsible for thousands of employees and billions in assets. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Wear the blue Tom Ford suit, and for God's sake, try to smile." Sebastian deleted the message without responding. By 7:30 that evening, Sebastian was sitting in the back of his Bentley, stuck in crosstown traffic and growing increasingly irritated. He hated being late almost as much as he hated blind dates. His driver, Martin, caught his eye in the rearview mirror. "We're only about 5 minutes away, sir. Traffic's clearing up ahead." Sebastian nodded, adjusting his cuffs. He had, despite himself, worn the blue Tom Ford. Not because Natalie suggested it, he told himself, but because it was the most appropriate for a dinner at Lumiere. His phone buzzed with an email from James containing the information he'd requested earlier. Nina Blackwell, 32, graduated top of her class from Johns Hopkins Medical School, completed her residency at Northwestern Memorial in Chicago, specializing in pediatric cardiothoracic surgery. Recently accepted a position at New York Presbyterian. No criminal record, no marriages, no significant social media presence. Professional. Accomplished. Probably completely uninteresting, Sebastian sighed, putting away his phone as the car pulled up to the restaurant. At least he could get this over with quickly. Dinner, polite conversation, a firm handshake goodbye, and he'd never have to see Dr. Nina Blackwell again. The maitre d' recognized him immediately. "Mr. Pierce, welcome back. Your table is ready and your guest has just arrived." Sebastian checked his watch, 7:55. She was early. Another point against her. He preferred punctuality, not eagerness. "This way, sir." Sebastian followed the maitre d' through the dimly lit restaurant. Lumiere was known for its intimate atmosphere, with candles on each table and discreet private booths. It was a place for people who wanted to be seen by the right people, while still maintaining the illusion of privacy. They approached a corner table where a woman sat with her back to him, her posture straight, dark hair falling in loose waves down her back. Something about the way she held herself made Sebastian pause. Then she turned, and everything Sebastian thought he knew about first impressions shattered. Nina Blackwell was stunning, but not in the manufactured way of the women he usually encountered in his social circle. She had warm brown skin, striking features, and dark eyes that widened slightly when she saw him. Something flashed across her face recognition, perhaps before she schooled her expression into a polite smile. "You must be Sebastian," she said, her voice low and confident. For the first time in years, Sebastian Pierce, Billionaire CEO, found himself momentarily speechless. He quickly recovered, extending his hand. "And you're Nina. I hope you haven't been waiting long." Her handshake was firm, her hand warm against his. "Just a few minutes. I prefer being early. Occupational hazard of a surgeon, I suppose. Every minute counts." Sebastian sat across from her, surprised to find himself intrigued. "My sister tells me you've just returned to New York." "Yes, after 8 years in Chicago." She took a sip of water. "Though returned isn't quite right. I grew up in Philadelphia." "New York is new territory for me professionally, though I did my undergrad at Columbia." "And what brought you back to the East Coast?" Nina's expression softened. "Family, primarily. My parents are getting older, and Philadelphia is just a train ride away now. And New York Presbyterian offered me the chance to help build their pediatric cardiothoracic program." She paused, studying him. "Though I suspect you already knew most of this, you strike me as someone who does his research." Sebastian felt an unexpected smile tug at his lips. Guilty as charged. "So what did your background check tell you about me, Mr. Pierce?" There was no accusation in her tone, just curiosity and perhaps a hint of amusement. "That you're at the top of your field. That you've published several groundbreaking papers on congenital heart defects. That you keep a remarkably low profile for someone with your credentials." Nina laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "And here I thought I'd have to suffer through the usual first date questions about my favorite movies and where I went to college. Would you prefer those?" Sebastian found himself leaning slightly forward, genuinely curious about her answer. "Not particularly." Her dark eyes met his. "I'd rather know why a billionaire CEO agreed to a blind date set up by his sister. Men in your position usually have women lined up around the block." The waiter arrived before Sebastian could respond. saving him from having to formulate an answer to a question he wasn't entirely sure of himself. They ordered drinks, a scotch for him, a glass of Cabernet for her, and briefly discussed the menu. When the waiter left, Sebastian found Nina watching him with that same direct gaze. It was disconcerting, being looked at as if she could see past the carefully constructed facade he presented to the world. "To answer your question," he said finally, "my sister is remarkably persistent. And she has significant blackmail material from our childhood." Nina smiled, revealing a small dimple in her right cheek. "Siblings are like that. I have 2 brothers who think my personal life is their business." "And is it their business?" "No more than your personal life is your sister's business." Nina took the glass of wine the waiter had just delivered. "And yet here we are." "Here we are," Sebastian echoed, lifting his scotch in a small toast. As the liquor burned pleasantly down his throat, he realized something startling. He was enjoying himself. They ordered dinner, roasted sea bass for her, steak for him, and the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Nina was sharp, quick-witted, and refreshingly direct. She didn't simper or flatter. When she disagreed with him, she said so plainly. When he made a point she found interesting, she built upon it rather than merely agreeing. "You must have other surgeons in your family," Sebastian commented as they finished their entrees. "The way you speak about medicine, it seems ingrained." Nina shook her head. "Actually, no. I'm the first doctor in my family. My father owns a construction company and my mother is a high school principal. They were baffled when their daughter wanted to cut people open for a living. But they supported you, completely." Her expression warmed with obvious affection. "They worked extra jobs to help with my undergraduate expenses, even though I had scholarships. My dad used to quiz me on anatomy terms he could barely pronounce." Sebastian felt a twinge of something like envy. His own father had been a brilliant businessman but a distant parent, expecting excellence and offering little praise. "They sound remarkable." "They are." Nina studied him over the rim of her wineglass. "And what about your parents? Your father founded Pierce Global, didn't he?" "He did." Sebastian's tone grew more formal, the way it always did when discussing his father. "He passed away 10 years ago. Heart attack." "I'm sorry." Nina's sympathy seemed genuine, not the practiced condolence he usually received. "And your mother?" "Very much alive and determined to see her grandchildren before she's too old to spoil them properly. Hence Natalie's crusade to see me settled." Nina laughed. "Ah, so that's the real reason for this blind date. Your sister is following maternal orders." "Natalie always was the obedient child," Sebastian said dryly. "I was the one who questioned everything. Somehow that doesn't surprise me." Nina's eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "You have the look of someone who's never taken anything at face value." Sebastian found himself wondering what else she saw when she looked at him. "Professional hazard. In my business, accepting things at face value is the fastest way to lose millions. In my profession as well, though the stakes are measured in lives rather than dollars." Nina's expression grew thoughtful. "Though I imagine you feel responsible for the livelihoods of everyone who works for you, that's its own kind of pressure." Sebastian was startled by her insight. Few people understood the weight of that responsibility. 15,000 employees worldwide, he said quietly. "And yes, I think about that every day." A comfortable silence fell between them. Sebastian realized they'd been talking for nearly 2 hours and he hadn't once checked his phone or thought about work. It was disorienting. "Would you like dessert?" he asked, finding that he wasn't ready for the evening to end. Nina shook her head. "I should probably get going. Early surgery tomorrow." Sebastian nodded, ignoring the unexpected disappointment he felt. "Of course. I'll have my driver take you home." That's not necessary. I can get a cab. I insist. He signaled for the check. It's on the way. Nina raised an eyebrow. You don't know where I live. Wherever it is, I'll make it on the way. Sebastian smiled, surprising himself with the small joke. Nina laughed, that rich sound that seemed to reach something long dormant inside him. Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse? After Sebastian paid the bill, waving away Nina's attempt to contribute, my sister's blackmail, my treat, they walked outside into the cool September evening. His driver had the Bentley waiting at the curb. This is subtle, Nina commented as Martin opened the door for them. If you'd prefer, I have a helicopter on standby, Sebastian deadpanned. Nina shot him an amused look as she slid into the back seat. Now you're just showing off. Sebastian joined her, acutely aware of her presence beside him in the confined space. Her perfume was subtle, something with notes of vanilla and amber. Where to? He asked. Upper West Side. Amsterdam and 86th. Sebastian relayed the address to Martin, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. They rode in comfortable silence for a few blocks. Thank you for dinner, Nina said finally. It was not what I expected. Is that a good thing? Yes. She turned to face him, her expression frank. I agreed to this blind date mostly to get my friend Olivia off my back. She's Natalie's yoga instructor, apparently, and they cooked this up together. I thought you'd be. What? Sebastian was genuinely curious, arrogant, cold, too busy checking your phone to have a real conversation. Sebastian winced slightly. That's not an entirely inaccurate assessment of how I've been described. Then they don't know you very well. Nina's voice was soft but certain. We just met, Sebastian pointed out. You don't really know me either. I'm a good judge of character. It's part of being a doctor. You learn to read people quickly. The car pulled up in front of a pre-war apartment building. Martin came around to open the door, but Sebastian stopped him with a gesture. He wanted a moment more. I enjoyed tonight, he said, surprised by how much he meant it. So did I. Nina smiled, that dimple appearing again. Which makes this awkward. Sebastian felt an unexpected tightening in his chest. What does? I'm starting a new position at one of the country's busiest hospitals. My schedule for the next 6 months is going to be brutal. Dating isn't really feasible right now. She looked genuinely regretful. I understand, Sebastian said, though he found that he didn't, not really. For the first time in years, he'd met someone who intrigued him, challenged him, made him forget about work for a few hours, and she was telling him she didn't have time for him. The irony wasn't lost on him. But, Nina continued, I would like to see you again, when things settle down. If you're interested. Sebastian studied her face in the dim light of the car. When will things settle down? Realistically, not for months. I'm a patient man. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. Nina's smile widened. Are you? Somehow I doubt that. For the right things, Sebastian said softly. Nina held his gaze for a long moment, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. My personal number is on the back. Call me in a few weeks. Maybe we can manage coffee between surgeries and whatever it is billionaires do all day. Sebastian took the card, his fingers brushing hers. Count on it. Martin opened the door and Nina stepped out. She turned back briefly. Goodbye, Sebastian Pierce. Thank you for proving me wrong about billionaires on blind dates. Then she was gone, walking into her building with the same confident posture he'd first noticed at the restaurant. Sebastian watched until she disappeared from view, still holding her card between his fingers. Home, sir? Martin asked as he got back in the driver's seat. Yes, Sebastian said, finally looking away from Nina's building. He slipped her card into his wallet, already wondering how soon was too soon to call. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Well, did you thank me yet? Sebastian considered not responding, but found himself typing back. The blue Tom Ford was a good call. He could almost hear his sister's triumphant laugh as he put his phone away and watched the city lights blur past the window, already thinking about when he might see Nina Blackwell again. The next morning, Sebastian woke earlier than usual. He'd slept poorly, his mind replaying moments from dinner with Nina. Her laugh, that dimple, the directness of her gaze when she'd called him out on his background check. He reached for his phone, scrolling to find the information James had compiled. There were details he hadn't had time to review before dinner where she'd grown up specifically, schools she'd attended before medical school, hobbies or interests mentioned in the few articles written about her. Sebastian paused, his finger hovering over the file. What was he doing? This wasn't a potential investment to analyze or a competitor to research. This was a woman who had explicitly told him she didn't have time for dating right now. With a decisive swipe, he closed the file and got out of bed. After a punishing workout in his home gym and a quick shower, he headed to the office, determined to focus on work and nothing else. That determination lasted until 10:17 a.m., when his phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. I'm between surgeries and realized I never asked what billionaires actually do all day. Is it all yacht parties and counting money, or do you occasionally do actual work? Sebastian felt a smile spread across his face before he could stop it. He saved the number under Nina Blackwell. Currently reviewing acquisition proposals for a shipping company in Singapore. Yacht party isn't until 3. Money counting scheduled for 4:30. 3 dots appeared immediately, indicating she was typing. Sounds exhausting. I just reconstructed a 3-year-old's pulmonary valve, but your day clearly has me beat. Sebastian chuckled, drawing a curious look from James, who had just entered with a stack of reports. He quickly schooled his expression. The quarterly projections, sir, James said, setting the folders on Sebastian's desk. And Mr. Harrington is waiting in the conference room. Thank you, James. Sebastian slid his phone into his pocket, momentarily forgetting about the text conversation. He had a full day of meetings ahead, including a tense negotiation with a stubborn board member who opposed his plans to expand into sustainable energy investments. It wasn't until nearly 4 hours later, as he was grabbing a quick lunch at his desk, that he remembered the unanswered text. He pulled out his phone, surprised to find 2 more messages from Nina. Apologies for the random text. Sleep deprivation and caffeine make for poor impulse control. And then, sent an hour later. And now I'm embarrassed for double texting. Forget I exist. Going to perform another surgery and pretend I didn't just act like an awkward teenager. Sebastian found himself laughing out loud, alone in his office. There was something refreshingly authentic about her messages, a far cry from the calculated communications he usually received. No apology necessary, he typed back. Your texts were the highlight of my morning meetings. And for the record, I don't think billionaires are allowed to count their own money. That's what we have accountants for. He hesitated, then added, How did the surgery go? Nina's response came quickly, successfully. Though I nearly fell asleep standing up during closing, 36 hours and counting. Sebastian frowned. You've been working for 36 hours straight. Welcome to the glamorous life of a surgeon. Don't worry, I'm about to crash in an on-call room for a few hours before my next case. Is that even safe? Operating on that little sleep? Studies show it's equivalent to being legally drunk. But there's a nationwide shortage of pediatric cardiac surgeons, so here we are. The good news is I'm very, very good at what I do, even when exhausted. Sebastian shook his head, a new respect blooming for what she did. He dealt with high-pressure situations daily, but no one's life hung in the balance if he made a mistake. "Get some rest, Dr. Blackwell," he typed. "The children of New York need those steady hands. Ordering me around already, Mr. Pierce. Bold move." Sebastian could almost see that amused expression she'd worn at dinner. Not an order, just good advice from someone who understands the importance of peak performance. Fair enough. Sleeping now, or trying to on this excuse for a mattress. Good luck with your money counting. Sebastian smiled, setting down his phone. He had back-to-back meetings for the rest of the afternoon, but he found his thoughts repeatedly drifting to Nina. What she'd said about her schedule wasn't an exaggeration or an excuse. Her job was demanding in ways his wealth and power couldn't comprehend. By evening, when his assistant reminded him of the charity gala he was expected to attend, Sebastian found himself unusually restless. These events were part of the job networking, maintaining relationships with other powerful people, keeping up appearances. Usually, he moved through them with practiced ease, making the necessary connections before leaving at the earliest acceptable moment. Tonight, however, as he stood in his tuxedo listening to a hedge fund manager drone on about his newest yacht, Sebastian found himself acutely aware of the superficiality of it all. He thought of Nina, probably still at the hospital, doing work that actually mattered. The contrast made him uncomfortable in a way he hadn't experienced before. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Excusing himself, he stepped away to check it, hoping irrationally that it might be Nina. Instead, it was Natalie. "So, have you called her yet?" Sebastian sighed. "It's been less than 24 hours. "That's a no then. What are you waiting for? She's working. Not everyone has time for constant texting. But you've texted her. That's a start. Mom will be thrilled." Sebastian put his phone away without responding. The last thing he needed was his mother getting involved. Penelope Pierce was even more determined than Natalie to see him settled down properly. He rejoined the gala, making the rounds and having the same polite, meaningless conversations he'd been having for years. All the while, his thoughts kept returning to Nina, and those few hours at dinner when he'd had a real conversation with someone who saw him as a person, not a power broker or a potential connection. It was after midnight when Sebastian finally returned to his penthouse. Without conscious decision, he found himself taking out his phone and typing a message to Nina. "Just survived a charity gala where I was cornered by 3 different people wanting investment advice, and one divorcee who not so subtly suggested I buy her a private island. Your 36-hour shift still sounds more appealing." He didn't expect a response. It was the middle of the night, and she was likely still catching up on sleep. But to his surprise, his phone buzzed almost immediately. "Private islands are overrated. All that sand gets everywhere." Also, hello from the hospital cafeteria at midnight. "The Jell-O is green tonight, which I'm told is the premium flavor." Sebastian smiled. "You're still at the hospital? I thought your shift ended hours ago." New admission. 6-month-old with a complex heart defect. "I'm reviewing her scans before tomorrow's surgery." "You're operating tomorrow? How much sleep have you had?" "About 4 hours, which in doctor time is practically a vacation. Don't worry, I'll grab another few hours before the procedure." The parents are terrified enough without adding sleep-deprived surgeon to their concerns. Sebastian hesitated, then typed, "Is there anything I can do? I assume the hospital would happily accept a donation." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her reply came through. "That's very generous, but no. New York Presbyterian isn't hurting for funds. Though if you're serious about helping, there are some free clinics in underserved neighborhoods that could use support. I can send you information when I'm not mainlining caffeine and memorizing cardiac dimensions." Sebastian found himself impressed by her response. Most people he offered money to accepted immediately, often asking for more. I'd like that information, and I was serious about the offer. I know you were. It's nice. Unexpected, but nice. Now I should get back to these scans. Some of us don't have yacht parties to recover from tomorrow. No yacht party. Just a 9 a.m. board meeting where I'll try not to think about the fact that you're literally holding a child's heart in your hands while I discuss profit margins. Different worlds, came her reply. But both necessary, I suppose. Good night, Sebastian. Good night, Nina. Good luck tomorrow. Sebastian put his phone on the nightstand and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Different worlds indeed, and yet he couldn't stop thinking about hers or her. The next few days fell into an unexpected pattern. Sebastian and Nina exchanged texts when they could, brief messages between her surgeries and his meetings, small glimpses into each other's days. He learned about her cases without patient details, the frustrations of hospital bureaucracy, her favorite hiding spot in the doctor's lounge when she needed a moment of quiet. He told her about negotiations with difficult clients, his plans for expanding the firm's focus on sustainable investments, even his annoyance with board members who couldn't see beyond the next quarter's profits. It was oddly intimate, these digital conversations that happened at all hours. Sometimes he wouldn't hear from her for nearly a day, and then he'd get a flurry of messages at 3 a.m. when she was taking a break between cases. Sebastian found himself looking forward to those texts more than he cared to admit. There was something refreshing about talking to someone who had no agenda with him, who wasn't impressed by his wealth or power, who challenged him and made him laugh. "Seb, are you even listening to me?" Natalie's voice broke through his thoughts. They were having lunch at her favorite restaurant, a trendy spot in Soho that specialized in overpriced salads and being seen. "Of course," Sebastian said automatically. "You were talking about the gallery opening." "No, I was talking about Nina Blackwell." "Olivia says she hasn't stopped talking about you." Natalie leaned forward, eyes bright with curiosity. "So, when are you seeing her again?" Sebastian took a deliberate sip of water. "She's busy. New job, demanding schedule. But you've been in touch. We've texted." Sebastian tried to sound casual, but something in his tone must have given him away. Natalie's eyes widened. "Oh my God, you like her. You actually like her." "She's intelligent and accomplished. Of course I like her." "No, you like her. You're doing that thing with your jaw that you do when you're trying not to show emotion." Natalie looked delighted. "This is fantastic. I need to call Mom." "Don't you dare." Sebastian fixed his sister with a stern look. "Nothing's happening. We had one dinner and some text conversations." "That's it." "For now," Natalie said, undeterred. "But I know you, Seb. You don't text anyone except me and Mom, and that's only because we force you. If you're voluntarily communicating with a woman, it's serious." Sebastian sighed. "Can we change the subject? How's Michael?" he asked, referring to Natalie's husband of 3 years. Fine. Working too much, but that's investment banking for you." Natalie waved a hand dismissively. "Not all of us can be billionaire CEOs who make their own hours." "I work more than anyone at the firm," Sebastian pointed out. "Yes, but that's by choice. You're a workaholic, which is exactly why it's so interesting that you're making time for these text conversations with a certain doctor." Sebastian was saved from responding by the arrival of their food. As Natalie dug into her quinoa bowl, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He resisted the urge to check it immediately, knowing it would only give his sister more ammunition. But after lunch, as soon as he was alone in the back of his car, he pulled out his phone. Sure enough, there was a message from Nina. Surgery successful, baby girl doing well in recovery, parents crying happy tears. Days like this make the sleep deprivation worth it. Sebastian felt a swell of admiration. Congratulations, you saved a life today. Team effort. Though I did do the tricky valve repair. What did you accomplish in your meeting? Convince the board to approve a $50 million investment in renewable energy startups. Not quite saving lives, but hopefully helping the planet a bit. That's actually impressive. Maybe you're not just a pretty face after all. Sebastian laughed out loud, earning another curious look from his driver in the rearview mirror. Careful, Dr. Blackwell, that almost sounded like a compliment. Sleep deprivation makes me say crazy things. Speaking of which, I'm about to crash for approximately 12 hours, or until my pager goes off again. Sweet dreams, Sebastian typed, then hesitated before adding, and Nina? I'm glad the surgery went well. You should be proud. Her response was simple. Thank you, that means more than you know. Something warm unfurled in Sebastian's chest as he put his phone away. He stared out the window at the city rushing past, aware that something was shifting inside him, something he wasn't entirely sure how to handle. Another week passed in much the same way, stolen moments of conversation between their hectic schedules, getting to know each other in this strange, disjointed fashion. Sebastian found himself thinking about Nina at odd moments during meetings, in the shower, as he lay in bed at night. He wondered what she was doing, if she was getting enough sleep, if she was thinking about him too. It was ridiculous, this preoccupation with a woman he'd spent exactly one evening with in person. And yet, he couldn't seem to help himself. Then, on a Tuesday morning, his phone rang while he was reviewing contracts in his office. Nina's name flashed on the screen. They'd never actually spoken on the phone before, only texted. A flutter of something like nervousness passed through him as he answered. Nina, this is unexpected. Sebastian. Her voice sounded tired but warm. Sorry to call out of the blue, I have a favor to ask, of course. What do you need? It's actually about that offer you made, to help with underfunded clinics. Sebastian sat up straighter, immediately interested. Tell me more. There's a free clinic in the Bronx that serves mostly uninsured patients. They have a pediatric cardiologist who comes in once a week, but their equipment is outdated and they're always short on basic supplies. Nina paused. I volunteer there when I can, but what they really need is funding for a new echocardiogram machine and some other diagnostic equipment. Consider it done. Send me the details and I'll have my foundation take care of it. Just like that. Nina sounded surprised. I was prepared to make a whole pitch. I trust your judgment, Sebastian said simply. If you say they need it, that's enough for me. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Thank you, Sebastian. That's incredibly generous. It's nothing. It's not nothing. It's about $100,000 worth of equipment. Sebastian shrugged, though she couldn't see him. Money I won't miss that will make a real difference. It's an easy decision. You continue to surprise me, Mr. Pierce. Is that a good thing? Yes, her voice softened. Definitely a good thing. She paused, and he could hear hospital sounds in the background, beeping machines, voices over an intercom. I should go. I'm between cases and just wanted to call while I had a minute. I'll email you the clinic's information. Nina, wait. Sebastian found himself not wanting the call to end. When's your next day off? Friday, actually. A rare scheduled break in the action. Why? Have dinner with me. The words came out more command than question, and he immediately regretted his tone. I mean, would you like to have dinner? Friday evening. Nina hesitated, and Sebastian held his breath. I'd like that, she said finally. Though I should warn you, I'll probably be exhausted, not the best company. I don't care, I'd just like to see you. The honesty in his own voice surprised him. All right then. Friday. But somewhere casual this time. I don't have the energy for Lumiere-level dining. I know just the place. I'll pick you up at 7, make it 8. I'll need time to transform from zombie doctor to presentable human. Sebastian smiled. 8 it is. I look forward to it. Me too, she said softly. And Sebastian, thank you again for the clinic. It means a lot. After they hung up, Sebastian sat at his desk, feeling strangely energized. He immediately called his assistant. James, I need you to clear my schedule for Friday evening. And get in touch with the Pierce Foundation. I want to set up a donation for a clinic in the Bronx. Details to follow. Right away, sir. Sebastian turned to his computer, but found it hard to focus on contracts when his mind kept wandering to Friday evening. He hadn't felt this way about seeing someone in. Well, possibly ever. It was unsettling and exhilarating. By Friday, Sebastian had arranged everything. He'd personally overseen the donation to the Bronx Clinic, ensuring the process would be smooth and the equipment delivered quickly. He'd chosen a restaurant, an authentic Italian place in the village, family-owned and far from the usual haunts of Manhattan's elite. And he'd cleared his entire evening with strict instructions that he not be disturbed unless the firm was literally on fire. At precisely 8 o'clock, Sebastian stood outside Nina's building. He'd opted for his own car tonight instead of the Bentley with Martin. It had been years since he'd driven himself around the city, but tonight it felt right, more personal, less like a business arrangement. Nina emerged from the building wearing a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired, as she'd warned she would be, but her smile was warm when she saw him. "No chauffeur tonight?" she asked as she approached. "I thought I'd drive." Sebastian opened the passenger door of his Aston Martin. "If that's all right with you." "Showing off the fancy car, I see." But she was smiling as she slid into the seat. "It's not showing off if you actually enjoy driving it," Sebastian countered as he got in beside her. The restaurant was only a 15-minute drive, but Sebastian found himself taking a slightly longer route, enjoying the simple pleasure of being in a car with Nina, listening to her talk about her week. She was animated despite her fatigue, describing a particularly challenging case and the satisfaction of seeing the patient improve. "Sorry," she said eventually. "I'm talking too much about work." "I don't mind. It's fascinating and much more meaningful than what I do." Nina turned to look at him. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Diminish what you do. Finance might not be as immediately dramatic as surgery, but it matters. Money makes the world function for better or worse. And from what I've gathered, you're trying to use yours to do some good." Sebastian was surprised by her defense. "Most people assume I'm just another greedy Wall Street type." "I'm not most people," Nina said simply. "And I've been paying attention during our conversations." They arrived at the restaurant, a cozy place called Maria's tucked away on a quiet street. The owner greeted Sebastian like an old friend, leading them to a small table in the back, partially hidden by a decorative wine rack. "You come here often?" Nina asked as they sat. "My father used to bring me here when I was young," Sebastian admitted, "before Pierce Global became what it is now. We'd talk about the business over plates of carbonara. It was the only time he ever really talked to me like I mattered." Nina's expression softened. "And now you're running his company. He'd be proud. Maybe." Sebastian picked up the menu, suddenly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "The pasta here is made fresh daily. I recommend the pappardelle with wild boar ragu." Nina allowed the subject change, studying her menu. "Sounds perfect. And maybe some of that wine you're partially hiding behind." The evening unfolded with the same easy rhythm of their text conversations, but better enhanced by the ability to see Nina's expressions, to hear the nuances in her voice, to witness that dimple appear when she smiled. She told him stories about medical school, about the first heart surgery she'd performed, about her brothers and their constant teasing. Sebastian found himself sharing things too about the pressure of taking over the firm at 24 after his father's death, about his mother's thinly veiled disappointment that he hadn't yet provided grandchildren, about his plans to shift more of the company's focus towards socially responsible investing. "You know," Nina said as they shared a tiramisu, "when your sister and Olivia arranged this blind date, I was sure it would be a disaster. Because all billionaires are arrogant jerks." "No," Nina pointed her fork at him. "Because all the men Olivia has tried to set me up with have been disasters. There was the lawyer who spent the entire dinner talking about his rowing trophies from Princeton, the architect who was still in love with his ex-wife, the neurosurgeon with the God complex." "Aren't all surgeons supposed to have God complexes?" Sebastian teased. "Cardiac surgeons have earned the right," Nina shot back with a grin. "We literally hold hearts in our hands." "Fair enough." Sebastian smiled, then grew more serious. "I'm glad you gave this a chance. Despite your reservations about billionaires and blind dates." "So am I." Nina's dark eyes held his. "You're not what I expected, Sebastian Pierce." "Is that a good thing? You ask that a lot." She tilted her head, studying him. "Yes, it's a very good thing." They lingered over coffee, neither seeming eager to end the evening. When they finally left the restaurant, the night had turned cool and clear, the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. "Would you like to take a walk?" Sebastian asked. "Washington Square Park isn't far." "I'd like that." They strolled side by side, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed. Each accidental touch sent a current through Sebastian, and he found himself deliberately letting his hand graze hers more often. The park was relatively quiet for a Friday night. They found a bench near the fountain and sat, watching the water shimmer in the lights. "I used to come here to study in undergrad," Nina said, looking around with a nostalgic smile. "There's something about this park that always felt hopeful to me." "What do you mean?" "It's where all these different parts of the city come together: students, tourists, locals, musicians, chess players. Everyone finding their own little space but still part of something larger." She shrugged. "I don't know if that makes sense." "It does." Sebastian looked at her profile, struck by how easily she shared these thoughts, these parts of herself. It made him want to do the same. "I've spent most of my life feeling separate from everyone else. First because of my father's expectations, then because of the position I inherited. People see the money, the power, the name. They don't see me." Nina turned to face him. "I see you, Sebastian." The simplicity of her statement, the certainty in her voice, undid something in him. Without thinking, Sebastian leaned forward and kissed her. Nina's lips were soft beneath his, and for a moment she seemed surprised. Then she was kissing him back, her hand coming up to rest against his cheek. It was gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as Sebastian slid his arm around her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally pulled apart, Nina's eyes were wide and dark in the dim light. "That was unexpected," Sebastian offered, suddenly uncertain. "No," she smiled, her hand still on his face. "Not unexpected, just really nice. Just nice." Sebastian raised an eyebrow, trying to lighten the moment. Nina laughed softly. "Fishing for compliments, Mr. Pierce. Fine." It was a spectacular kiss from an irritatingly handsome billionaire. "Better, much better." Sebastian grinned, feeling a lightness he couldn't remember experiencing in years. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Though I'm still getting used to being found irritating. I find it keeps men like you humble." But she squeezed his hand, her expression warm. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked, shoulders touching. Sebastian was acutely aware of the warmth of her beside him, the faint scent of her perfume, the way her thumb absently traced circles on his hand. Finally, Nina sighed. I should probably get home. Early shift tomorrow. I thought this was your weekend off. Just Friday. I'm covering for a colleague tomorrow who has a family emergency. Nina stood, tugging gently on his hand. Walk me back to your ridiculously expensive car. Sebastian rose, keeping her hand in his. It's a very practical vehicle, I'll have you know. Oh yes, nothing says practical like an Aston Martin in Manhattan. They bantered lightly as they walked back to where Sebastian had parked. The drive to Nina's apartment was too short, and soon they were standing outside her building once more. I had a wonderful time, Nina said, looking up at him. Thank you for dinner and the walk and the everything else. When can I see you again? Sebastian asked, not caring if he sounded eager. Nina's expression turned regretful. My schedule for the next 2 weeks is brutal. There's a conference I'm presenting at, and I'm covering extra shifts for a colleague on maternity leave. Sebastian tried not to let his disappointment show. I understand. But, Nina added, stepping closer, I'd like to try. Maybe we can steal a few hours here and there. I'll take whatever time you can give me, Sebastian said honestly. Nina smiled, then rose on her toes to kiss him again, brief but tender. Good night, Sebastian. Good night, Nina. Sebastian watched her enter the building, waiting until she was safely inside before returning to his car. As he drove home through the late-night streets, he found himself smiling despite the knowledge that he wouldn't see her again for weeks. Something had changed tonight, shifted between them, and for once, he was willing to be patient to see where it might lead. The next 2 weeks proved to be a test of that patience. Nina's schedule was even more demanding than she'd warned, with barely time for brief text exchanges. Sebastian found himself thinking about her constantly, replaying their dinner, their walk in the park, that kiss. His distraction didn't go unnoticed. You haven't heard a word I've said in the last 10 minutes, complained Marcus Daniels, his CFO, during a strategy meeting. I heard you, Sebastian responded automatically. You think the Henderson acquisition is too risky given the current market conditions. Marcus looked skeptical. Lucky guess. What's going on with you lately? You're not yourself. Sebastian straightened in his chair. I'm fine. Just considering all angles of this deal, if you say so. Marcus didn't look convinced. Now about the projections for next quarter. The meeting continued, and Sebastian forced himself to focus. But afterward, alone in his office, he found himself checking his phone again. No new messages from Nina. Frustrated with his own behavior, Sebastian shoved the phone into a drawer and turned determinedly to his computer. He had a multi-billion-dollar company to run. He couldn't afford to be distracted by feelings like a lovesick teenager. The thought brought him up short. Was that what this was? Was he falling for Nina Blackwell after just 2 meetings and a series of text messages? The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Pierce, your sister is here to see you, Sebastian sighed. Send her in. Natalie burst into his office with her usual energy, dropping into the chair across from his desk. You've been avoiding me. I've been working. And ignoring my texts and calls. She narrowed her eyes at him. I had to hear from Olivia, who heard from Nina, that you two had a second date, and it went well. Sebastian tried not to react to Nina's name. It was dinner, Nat, nothing dramatic, really. Because Olivia says Nina's been walking around with this stupid smile on her face whenever she checks her phone, which apparently is constantly. A ridiculous surge of pleasure went through Sebastian at this information. She's been busy. We've hardly talked, but you will see her again. When our schedules align, Sebastian said carefully. Natalie studied him for a moment, then broke into a wide smile. Oh my God, you're falling for her. I can see it on your face. Don't be ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, it's wonderful. Sebastian Pierce, The man whose last relationship ended because, and I quote, she wanted more time than I could give, is actually willing to wait for a woman's schedule to open up. Sebastian scowled at his sister. Did you come here just to gloat? Partly. Natalie's expression softened. But mostly I came to say I'm happy for you. Nina's amazing, and you deserve someone who challenges you, who makes you think about something besides work. It's very new, Sebastian cautioned, and complicated. Her career is as demanding as mine. The best things usually are complicated, Natalie said with unusual wisdom. Look at me and Michael. Two investment bankers with insane hours, and somehow we make it work. It's different. Is it? Or are you just afraid? Sebastian gave his sister a sharp look. I'm not afraid. Then prove it. Don't let this fizzle out because it's hard to schedule. Make time for her. Show her she matters. Natalie stood. That's my sisterly advice for the day. Take it or leave it. After she left, Sebastian sat thinking about her words. Was he afraid? Not of his feelings. Those were becoming increasingly clear, despite his attempts to rationalize them away. But perhaps he was afraid of what those feelings might require of him, changes to his carefully structured life, compromises, vulnerability. His phone buzzed in the drawer where he'd stashed it. He pulled it out to find a message from Nina. Surgery ran late, missing our conversations. How was your day? Something warm unfurled in his chest. He typed back immediately. Better now. When do you present at the conference? Tomorrow morning. Nervous as hell. What if I forget everything I know about hypoplastic left heart syndrome in front of 200 cardiologists? Impossible. You could talk about heart defects in your sleep. How do you know I don't? I could be a sleep talker, reciting medical journals at 3 a.m. Sebastian smiled. If you are, I look forward to finding out someday. There was a long pause before her reply came. That's a very presumptuous statement, Mr. Pierce. Is it? I thought it was optimistic. Maybe a bit of both. I like it. Now I should try to sleep before my career-making/destroying presentation tomorrow. Wish me luck. You don't need luck, but I'm wishing it anyway. Sebastian put his phone down, Natalie's advice echoing in his mind. Make time for her. Show her she matters. An idea began to form a way to do exactly that. The next morning, Nina stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Hilton Midtown, her laser pointer trembling slightly as she prepared to begin her presentation. Innovative approaches to complex congenital heart defects in neonates wasn't exactly a title that would draw crowds in most settings, but at the American College of Cardiology conference, it had filled the room with attentive doctors. She took a deep breath, scanning the audience one last time, and froze. In the back row, slightly apart from the crowd of medical professionals in their conference badges and comfortable shoes, sat Sebastian Pierce. In his impeccable suit, he stood out like a peacock among pigeons. But it was the intent expression on his face, the small, encouraging smile he gave her when their eyes met, that nearly undid her. He had come to her presentation. He had taken time from running his financial empire to sit in a hotel ballroom and listen to her talk about pediatric heart surgery. Nina felt a rush of something powerful and unfamiliar, a warmth that spread through her chest and steadied her shaking hand. With renewed confidence, she began her presentation, occasionally glancing at Sebastian as she spoke, drawing strength from his presence. Afterward, as colleagues surrounded her with questions and compliments, she kept one eye on the back of the room, worried Sebastian might slip away. But he waited patiently, checking his phone but never leaving his position. When the last questioner finally moved on, Nina made her way toward him, unable to keep the smile from her face. "What are you doing here?" she asked as she reached him. "Supporting you." Sebastian's eyes were warm as they met hers. "Your presentation was brilliant, by the way. I didn't understand half the medical terminology, but I could tell you impressed everyone in the room. You didn't have to come. I wanted to. He took her hand, a simple gesture that felt significant. I wanted to see you in your element, to understand that part of your life better. Nina felt something shift inside her, a yielding she hadn't expected. That means a lot to me. Do you have any more sessions to attend today? Sebastian asked. Nina checked her watch. One more panel I should be at, but not until 2. Then have lunch with me. There's a decent restaurant in the hotel. Decent. From a man who frequents Michelin-starred establishments, Sebastian smiled. Acceptable, then, and convenient. I wouldn't want to make you late for your panel. They found a table in a quiet corner of the hotel restaurant. Over salmon for her and steak for him, they fell into the easy conversation that had characterized their texts and their previous meetings. I have a confession, Nina said as they finished their meal. I almost chickened out of that blind date. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Really? You seemed so confident. That was an act. I was convinced it would be terrible. I even made Olivia promise to call me with a fake emergency if I texted her the word archipelago. Sebastian laughed. That's an unusual safe word. Had to be something I wouldn't use in normal conversation. Nina smiled. I'm glad I didn't need it, so am I. Sebastian reached across the table, taking her hand. Nina, I know you're busy. I know your career demands everything from you right now, but I want to keep seeing you, however we can make it work. Nina's expression turned serious. It won't be easy. My schedule is unpredictable. I get called in at all hours. Most of the men I've dated couldn't handle it. I'm not most men. No, she agreed softly. You're not. So is that a yes? Sebastian's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, sending little shivers up her arm. Yes, Nina squeezed his hand. But fair warning, I won't be any less busy for the foreseeable future if you're expecting that to change. I'm not. Sebastian's expression was serious. I understand demanding careers, Nina. I have one too. We'll figure it out. The certainty in his voice made Nina's chest tighten with emotion. Okay then, we'll figure it out. Sebastian smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face. Good. Now, what time is your panel? Nina checked her watch and jumped up. In 15 minutes, I need to go. Sebastian stood as well, dropping money on the table for the bill. I'll walk you there. You don't have to, I want to, he said simply. As they walked through the hotel toward the conference rooms, Sebastian's hand found the small of her back, a light touch, proprietary but not possessive. Nina found she liked it, this subtle indication that they were together. At the door to the ballroom where her panel was being held, Nina turned to face him. Thank you for coming today. It meant a lot. I'm glad I did. Sebastian hesitated, then leaned down to press a quick, chaste kiss to her lips. Call me later. Nina nodded, momentarily speechless. As Sebastian walked away, she touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. Then, with a small shake of her head, she straightened her shoulders and entered the ballroom, attempting to refocus on cardiology, and not the man who was rapidly becoming a delightful distraction. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm between them. They saw each other when they could, dinners squeezed in between her surgeries and his meetings, early morning coffee when she was coming off a night shift, and he was heading into the office, occasional weekends when their schedules miraculously aligned. It wasn't conventional dating by any means, but it worked for them. Sebastian found himself reorganizing his calendar to accommodate her unpredictable schedule, something he'd never done for anyone else. And Nina made efforts too, trading shifts and calling in favors from colleagues to free up time for him. They learned each other's patterns and preferences. Sebastian discovered that Nina needed absolute quiet to fall asleep, but could then sleep through almost anything. Nina learned that Sebastian started each day with a punishing workout and black coffee, no matter how late he'd been up working. He found out she couldn't cook to save her life, but made excellent cocktails. She realized he had a secret sweet tooth despite his disciplined diet. And somewhere along the way, what had started as an unexpected attraction deepened into something more substantial. Sebastian found himself sharing thoughts and fears he'd never voiced to anyone else about the weight of his father's legacy, his concerns about the ethical implications of certain investments, his secret dream of someday scaling back his role to focus on the foundation's philanthropic work. Nina, in turn, opened up about the toll her work sometimes took on her emotionally, the children she couldn't save, her struggles balancing her dedication to her patients with her own need for a life outside the hospital. 3 months after their first date, Sebastian arrived at Nina's apartment for a rare, full Sunday together. She opened the door looking exhausted but happy, dressed in leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair piled messily on top of her head. "Sorry for the casual look," she said, stepping back to let him in. "I got home from a 36-hour shift an hour ago and barely had time to shower." "You look beautiful," Sebastian said honestly, pulling her into a kiss. She did look beautiful to him, even perhaps especially like this, unguarded and natural. Nina's apartment was small but comfortable, with bookshelves crammed with medical texts and novels, colorful throw pillows, and framed photographs of her family. It was nothing like Sebastian's minimalist penthouse, and he found he preferred it this space that felt lived in and personal. "I brought breakfast," he said, holding up a bag from her favorite bakery, "and coffee." "You're an angel," Nina said fervently, taking the coffee cup he offered. "I was going to attempt to cook for you, but that would have ended in disaster and possibly a visit from the fire department. I've tasted your attempt at scrambled eggs. I came prepared." Sebastian grinned as she swatted his arm. "They weren't that bad. They were inedible." "I've never seen eggs turn that color before." Nina laughed, the sound still sending a warm current through him even after months of hearing it. "Fine. Next time you can cook. Deal." They settled on her small sofa with their breakfast, Nina's legs draped over Sebastian's lap as they ate and talked. It felt comfortable, domestic in a way Sebastian had never experienced before. He found himself imagining more mornings like this, years of them, and the thought didn't terrify him as it once might have. "What are you thinking about?" Nina asked, noticing his expression. "You've got that serious CEO look." Sebastian hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I was thinking that I love this, being here with you, like this." Nina's eyes softened. "I love it too." "I've never felt this way before," Sebastian admitted. "About anyone." "Is that a good thing or a terrifying thing?" Nina asked, her tone light but her eyes serious. "Both," Sebastian said honestly, "but mostly good." Nina set her coffee down and shifted to sit up facing him. "I should tell you something." Sebastian felt a flicker of apprehension. "That sounds ominous." "No, it's not. It's just—" Nina took a deep breath. "I've been offered a position. A research fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital. It's a huge opportunity. Their pediatric cardiac program is the best in the country, and I'd be working with Dr. Elaine Sorensen, who's pioneering a new technique for valve replacement in infants." Sebastian felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "Boston? Yes. When would you start?" "Not for 6 months, and it's only for a year." Nina's eyes searched his face. "I haven't accepted yet. I wanted to talk to you first. 6 months from now, a year apart." Sebastian tried to process what this meant for them, this relationship that had become so important to him so quickly. "It's an incredible opportunity," he said finally. "You should take it." "Just like that?" Nina looked surprised. "What do you want me to say?" That you should turn down a career-defining fellowship because we've been dating for 3 months. Sebastian's tone was harsher than he intended. Nina flinched slightly. No, I just thought. I don't know what I thought. Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. He took her hand. Nina, your career is important. This fellowship sounds like something you've worked toward for years. Of course you should take it. But what about us? Nina's voice was quiet. Boston isn't that far, but... We'll make it work, Sebastian said with more confidence than he felt. I have a jet, remember, and offices in Boston. We can see each other on weekends. Nina's expression cleared slightly. You'd be willing to do that, long distance. For you? Yes. Sebastian surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. A few months ago, he wouldn't have considered rearranging his life for anyone. Now, the idea of not seeing Nina regularly was far worse than the inconvenience of regular trips to Boston. Nina leaned forward, kissing him softly. Thank you. For understanding, for supporting this. Sebastian pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. Always, he murmured against her lips and found that he meant it. Whatever Nina needed, whatever made her happy, he wanted to provide. It was a new feeling, this selflessness, and yet it felt right. They spent the rest of the day together, watching old movies on Nina's couch, ordering in lunch and then dinner, talking and laughing and simply enjoying each other's company. Neither mentioned Boston again, but it hovered on the edges of Sebastian's consciousness, the knowledge that this woman who had become so central to his life would soon be hours away. That night, as they lay in Nina's bed, Sebastian held her close, listening to her breathing slow as she drifted toward sleep. Nina, he whispered. She responded drowsily. I love you. He felt her stiffen slightly, then relax. She turned in his arms to face him, her eyes shining in the dim light. I love you too, she said softly. I wasn't sure if it was too soon to say it. Sebastian kissed her forehead. Maybe it is, I don't care. Nina smiled, nestling closer to him. Neither do I. They fell asleep entwined, the declaration hanging in the air between them, a new commitment, a deeper connection, as they faced the uncertainty of the months ahead. The next 6 months passed in a blur of work and stolen moments together. Sebastian and Nina made the most of their time, knowing their opportunities to be together would soon be more limited. They settled into a routine of sorts, dinner at his penthouse or her apartment, several times a week, occasional weekends away, when Nina could get coverage for her shifts. Quiet mornings over coffee before they each headed to their demanding jobs. As Nina's departure for Boston approached, Sebastian found himself increasingly unsettled by the prospect of their separation. He threw himself into work, staying later at the office, taking on more responsibilities, as if to prepare himself for the empty hours he would soon need to fill. Natalie noticed, of course. You're being an idiot, she informed him during one of their weekly lunches. Thank you for that insightful analysis, Sebastian replied dryly. I'm serious, Seb. You're pulling away from Nina because you're scared of how much you'll miss her. Sebastian set down his fork with deliberate calm. That's not what I'm doing. It is. You canceled on her twice last week. You're working until midnight every night. Classic Sebastian Pierce avoidance technique. I'm not avoiding her, I'm busy. The Henderson merger is bullshit, Natalie cut him off. The Henderson merger is proceeding exactly as planned. You're creating busy work because you're afraid. Sebastian glared at his sister. And what exactly am I afraid of, since you seem to know my mind better than I do? You're afraid of needing her, Natalie said simply. Of acknowledging that she's become essential to you, because if you admit that, then her being in Boston is going to hurt like hell. Sebastian wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in his throat. because, as usual, his irritating sister was right. He had been pulling away, creating distance as a defense mechanism. "She leaves in 2 weeks," Natalie continued, her tone gentler. "Don't waste that time because you're trying to protect yourself from feeling the inevitable pain of missing her." Sebastian sighed. "When did you get so wise about relationships? Marriage has its benefits." Natalie smiled. "Now, are you going to fix this, or do I need to call Nina and tell her my brother is being an emotionally stunted idiot?" "I'll fix it," Sebastian promised, already reaching for his phone. That evening, Sebastian arrived at Nina's apartment with flowers and an apology. "I've been distant," he acknowledged as soon as she opened the door. "I'm sorry." Nina took the bouquet of lilies, her favorite, with a small smile. "You have been. I was beginning to think you were having second thoughts about us." "Never." Sebastian followed her inside, watching as she put the flowers in a vase. "I was trying to." He paused, struggling to articulate feelings he rarely examined. "I was trying to protect myself, I think." "From how much I'm going to miss you." Nina's expression softened. "I'm going to miss you too, terribly. But pulling away from each other now doesn't make that any easier." "I know, I was being—" He searched for the word. "A typical man," Nina suggested with a small smile. Sebastian laughed despite himself. "I was going to say an idiot, but that works too." Nina stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You're forgiven. This time. But don't shut me out, Sebastian, not now." "I won't," he promised, holding her close. "I've taken the next 2 weeks off work. I want to spend as much time with you as possible before you go." Nina looked up at him in surprise. "You're taking 2 weeks off? You?" "I am. And I'm coming to Boston next weekend to help you find an apartment. And I've scheduled regular trips there for the duration of your fellowship." Sebastian tightened his arms around her. "I'm committed to making this work, Nina, to us." "I love you," Nina said simply, rising on her toes to kiss him. "I love you too," Sebastian murmured against her lips. "More than I thought possible." The 2 weeks before Nina's departure passed too quickly, despite their efforts to savor every moment. Sebastian kept his promise, setting aside work to focus entirely on Nina. They visited her parents in Philadelphia, spent a weekend at his beach house in the Hamptons, and had dinner with Natalie and her husband, who had become friends with Nina over the months. The night before Nina was to leave for Boston, they lay in Sebastian's bed, the lights of the city glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I've been thinking," Nina said, her head resting on his chest. "About us." Sebastian tensed slightly, bracing himself. "What about us?" Nina propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Relax, it's nothing bad. I was just thinking that I don't want to find an apartment in Boston." "You need somewhere to live, Nina." "I know, but I was thinking I could stay in your Boston apartment, the one you hardly ever use." "If that's not too presumptuous." Sebastian felt something unwind in his chest. "It's not presumptuous at all. I'd like that, having you in my space even when I can't be there." "Good." Nina settled back against him. "And I want to keep my apartment here for weekends when I can come back." "Or you could just stay here," Sebastian suggested quietly. "With me." Nina went still. "Are you asking me to move in with you? Eventually, I mean, after the fellowship." "Yes." Sebastian hadn't planned to have this conversation tonight, but now that it was happening, he was certain. "I know it's soon, but these past months, I've never been happier, Nina. I want to fall asleep next to you every night, not just when our schedules align. I want your books mixed with mine on the shelves, your ridiculous coffee mugs in my kitchen." "My coffee mugs are not ridiculous," Nina protested, but she was smiling, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And yes, when I come back from Boston, I want to live with you." Sebastian kissed her, pouring all the love and promise he felt into it. "It's settled then." "It is." Nina nestled closer to him. Though I warn you, I'm bringing all my ridiculous coffee mugs and my throw pillows. Your place could use some color. Bring whatever you want, Sebastian said, meaning it. As long as you come back to me. Always, Nina promised. And Sebastian held onto that word as he held her, storing it away for the lonely nights ahead. The next morning, Sebastian drove Nina to the airport himself, ignoring her protests that she could take a cab. They stood at the security checkpoint, holding each other as travelers streamed around them. This isn't goodbye, Sebastian reminded her. I'll see you next weekend in Boston. I know. Nina's eyes were red-rimmed but dry. It's just, I've gotten used to seeing you nearly every day. Me too. Sebastian brushed a strand of hair from her face. But it's only a year, and we'll make it work. We will, Nina agreed, her voice stronger. She kissed him one last time. I love you, Sebastian Pierce. I love you, Nina Blackwell. Sebastian held her gaze, memorizing the exact shade of her dark eyes. Now go save some tiny hearts in Boston. Nina laughed, the sound slightly watery. I will. And you go make some ethical billions or whatever it is you do all day. With a final squeeze of his hand, she turned and joined the security line. Sebastian watched until she was through, until she turned for one last wave before disappearing from view. The drive back to his penthouse was quiet, the city seeming somehow dimmer without Nina in it. But as Sebastian thought about the coming year, he found he wasn't afraid anymore. What they had built together was strong enough to survive the distance. And waiting for her to return, to move into his home and his life permanently, gave him something he'd never expected to find a future to look forward to that had nothing to do with business or money or power. A future built on love, with the brilliant, compassionate woman who had walked into his life because of a blind date he'd never wanted to attend. Sebastian smiled at the irony of it all as he entered his penthouse, already counting the days until he would see Nina again. His sister had been right after all. Sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never planned for.